For those of you that don't know, I had hip surgery 6 months ago. Now I know you're probably asking yourself, man, aren't you too young to have hip surgery? Oh, is it a hip replacement? Oh, I thought only dogs got hip dysplasia. Well, I have one thing for you. Read my shirt. Let me just take you on a little journey. I'm at the 6-month post-op mark, and it also happens to be Thanksgiving week. And so I just wanted to make this video just in my garage, not highly produced, and just kind of take you on the journey of what even got me to have surgery, but then also what these past 6 months have been like. I might do one at the 1 year mark, so this might be part 1, but it was just kind of on my heart to just kind of share my story and hopefully encourage some people maybe. So, gosh, I've been an athlete my whole life, and being an athlete takes a toll on your body. I've played basketball since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, so 5, 6 years old. I've played softball, soccer. I even tried my hand at roller hockey at one point in time. It's a bad choice in my life, but that's okay. Basically, if there was a ball involved, I would play it. And as I got older, I've gotten into triathlons, and I've done pretty well at those. And so being active is just part of my DNA. It's who I am. And so a couple years ago, I started having some pretty significant hip pain, and I just chalked it up to being an athlete. When you've been so hard on your body for so many years, you kind of expect aches and pains. And so last summer in the spring, summer of 2019, I went to New Zealand and Australia and Belize and had an amazing summer. It was so much fun, and I did some amazing things. I went rock climbing and kayaking in the ocean and scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef, and then down in the Belizean Reef, which is the second largest in the world. But I did it all with some pain in my hip. And that brings me kind of to my first point, where I know so many people who allow physical pain to completely control and dictate their life. And hear me when I say this, I know that pain can be debilitating, and I know that it can hurt. And there were many days, whether it was between the lupus that I have or between my hip pain, that I just said, nope, I can't do it today. But ultimately, my goal was to be adventurous, and my goal was to be active. I really am a firm believer that movement is lubrication. So the more we move, the more lubricated our joints are, and then we feel better for longer. And so I just kept moving forward, even in pain. And so I get back from Belize, I start the school year again, and by this point in time, it's August 2019, and my hip was killing me. But I refused to go to the doctor because I'm so in tune with my body, or so I thought, that I even told my boss when she said, you really should go get that checked out. I even told her, no. I'm not going to go to the hip doctor because he's going to tell me that I have a torn labrum and that I'm going to need hip surgery. And I don't have time for hip surgery. Famous last words, huh? So anyways, it started getting pretty unbearable, and so I decided to go to my orthopedic surgeon. He has done all 3 of my knee surgeries. He has dealt with my dislocated shoulder. He's dealt with my hurt wrist. Like, the list is long and distinguished of my orthopedic needs and injuries. So I went to him, and sure enough, we did an MRI. He said my labrum was torn and that I need surgery, and that he's not a hip specialist, so he sent me to his partner for more more workups and to talk more about hip surgery. Okay, great. So, still August 2019. I meet with this hip surgeon, and he walked in, not what I was expecting, but he basically told me, I hate to tell you this, but you're here because you think you tore your labrum, and you did, but I'm here to tell you that your hip is in a lot worse shape than you think it is. I'm sorry, what? One thing I do appreciate about him is he was very blunt. His bedside manner was not so much there, but he pretty much said, your hip is effed up. And he did a few more tests, and this is when he first told me that I have hip dysplasia. To which I responded, I thought only dogs had hip dysplasia. Like, that's what my dog had. And he said, no, humans have it as well, and you were most likely born with it, but it was such a mild case of it. He actually said, I'm pretty surprised that this hasn't come up earlier because you've been so active with sports and stuff. He goes, but you have hip dysplasia, and basically that's a malformation of your hip socket, right? So he's like, the solution for this is a pretty invasive surgery that I actually don't do this surgery, and I need to send you to more of a specialist. Okay, cool. This is where Dr. Ferguson comes in. Now, I really hope that you never have to meet her, because that probably means that you have to have hip surgery, and I don't really wish that on anybody. However, if you're out there and you find yourself in need of hip surgery, you need to call Dr. Tanya Ferguson at Music City Orthopedics. She is hands down the best surgeon in the nation, and yes, I'm biased. So, when I left that first hip surgeon, I left very deflated, very discouraged, and even though I know my hope is in the Lord and not in my physical ability, I was feeling kind of hopeless, because he had actually told me that I wouldn't play sport again, that I wouldn't be running again, I wouldn't be able to play basketball again and do all of the things that I love. And I was not willing to accept that. And so I'm going into Dr. Ferguson's office kind of deflated. And she comes into the office, and we have a very long conversation where I felt like I was the only patient that she had that day. She was probably with me for about an hour. And she did all these little tests and said, yeah, you do have hip dysplasia, and I don't know the extent of it yet because I need to see x-rays and the MRI and things like that. But you are a very high candidate for this surgery that's called a periacetibular osteotomy, or PAO. And she said, I don't want to go there yet because I don't have all of the facts. But if that surgery ends up being the route that we need to go, I will be here and walk you through this every step of the way. You will not be in this alone, and we'll get you back. I left that appointment, and I sat in my car and I just cried, because I had hope again. I felt like I had been seen. I felt like I wasn't just another case. I wasn't just another patient. I was a unique patient and a unique case, and she was taking it very seriously. So she had me go get a few more MRIs and some contrast things and a whole bunch of these different things. And a few weeks later, so we're probably in September, October now, I went back to her, and she said, yep, this is what I see. And, you are a very high candidate for a labral tear as well. I see that. I don't know the full extent of it until I potentially get in there, but you are going to need this surgery. And like I said, it's a very big deal. It is not something to be taken lightly. And she's like, so, she's like, we're not in any massive rush to do it. But it's definitely something you need to think about, and timing of it, because being a school teacher, it's going to be an extensive recovery, and you want to, I don't want you to have to miss a lot of work and stuff. So she explained to me what it is. And so, I had basically the PAO is it's a preservation surgery, okay? So all of my bone itself was pretty good and solid, so I didn't need a replacement. It's actually supposed to prolong a replacement for a while. But basically, you have your acetibulum, okay, or your pelvis, right? That's supposed to be kind of shaped like this. And you've got your femur, which is, we'll pretend it's my femur, your femur head, femur, and it kind of sits in a socket like this, right? And your labrum is a lining that lines that to help it move, okay? So hip dysplasia, a version of it, is maybe your hip socket is too shallow, or it's flat, right? And so it causes the femur to go out of place. In my case, it was posteriorly and not medial. Anyways, it was off to the back, kind of like this. So I didn't have full coverage of the femoral head like I was supposed to. And my femur, instead of being round, was kind of jagged, or there was something. And so basically with that happening, my hip kept kind of going out of socket, which that has happened my whole life. Apparently it's not normal, but it's happened, right? Yeah. So what she did, I specifically had an anteverting PAO. So she broke my hip bone intentionally in 3 or 4 places and shifted it so I had better coverage of my femoral head. Then she screwed it together with 5 screws. And then she repaired my labrum. So anteverting PAO, labral refixation, and femoral head neck contouring. That was the whole surgery I had. It was like 8 hours. So broke my hip bone, moved it, screwed it back together. She had to reattach my labrum because it was, like 90-95% detached. So she had to reattach that, and then she had to shave and carve my femoral head neck to have a better kind of position so it would all move better. No big deal. No big deal. And so that was the surgery that I had. And she explained all of that to me. And I looked probably like you guys look right now, just a deer in the headlights. What the crap are you talking about? You're going to intentionally break my hip? Yeah. But Dr. Ferguson was so kind and so patient and so gentle, and she's so knowledgeable and explained everything to me. And I, being a personal trainer, I know anatomy enough to be dangerous. And so I had a lot of pretty specific questions for her, which she was so patient in answering. It was great. And so she was like, you don't have to have it right now, but if the pain gets unbearable, we probably want to schedule that. Probably 3 weeks later, I called her office and was like, I need to get this scheduled. So we scheduled it for the spring. I guess technically the summer, like right after I got done with school. And that whole spring, I had just been living my life, right? I knew that it was going to be fixed. And so I kept working out, I kept hiking, doing all of these things. And in preparation for it, I felt like the Lord had told me, Stacy, you're a triathlete. You're having 3 surgeries done in one. So you need to train for this. You need to train for this triathlon surgery. At this point, also, a friend, or Dr. Ferguson, had referred me to one of her former patients. And I found her on social media, and she started helping me out, which was really great. She helped me out with the mental game. She's a triathlete as well. And she had told me, she's like, Stace, you have to think of this as an Ironman, not a sprint. So Ironman is, 17-hour cutoff. You're working out all day, you're exercising, you're in it for the long haul. A sprint, you're just in, out, done, give it your everything, right? So you got to get that mindset right. And that transformed my life and how I viewed going into this surgery. So going back to what the Lord said, he had said, you need to train for this as if you would a triathlon. And so I got my nutrition in order, which it hadn't been horrible, but I got it in order. And I did. I trained. I was on my bike. I was swimming. I was running as I could tolerate. That got really hard to do. I was working out every day with body weight stuff and doing some weights, a lot of hiking, a lot of burpees. And that's what I did. I trained all the way up until the day of surgery. And I went in feeling amazing. And I went in with the mentality of, this is not going to level me. It feels like it might, and the enemy really wanted me to believe that it would level me, but I knew it wouldn't because I had the Lord on my side. I had community. I had a team of people, which I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So, May 29th. No, that's not true. May 26th is the day of surgery. It's a Tuesday. I woke up about 2:45, had to be at St. Thomas, I think by 5 a.m. to get checked in and all that stuff. And so I woke up. This is my last morning of being able to move freely and on my own for who knows how long. So what did I do? I knocked out 100 burpees, of course. Anyway, so I knocked out some burpees, took a shower, had a special solution I had to wash myself with. And then Mom, Dad, and I headed up to Nashville to get checked in. I got my own private room, and the staff there was amazing. They know what they're doing. Well, at least I hope they do. No, they do. It's a great, great team up there at St. Thomas. And so I got all ready to go. They put an epidural in, which that was very weird, a very weird sensation. And Dr. Ferguson came and saw me. And then, I went into surgery. And so like I said, it was about 8.5 hours long and best sleep I've ever had. And so anyways, I wake up. Apparently I woke up in the recovery room, and I don't remember that. I don't remember Dr. Ferguson yelling at me to move my toes, because that was a sign. If I could do that, that was a sign that she didn't nick the sciatic nerve, and I could do that, which is a great thing. But then next thing I remember is being wheeled back into my room, where I'm going to be for the next 4 nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 nights. And so I'm in my room, my dad's there. I remember even joking around and being like, look at this, I'm right out of surgery and I'm doing pull-ups already, because I had one of those bars to like pull up to allow myself to move up the bed. I couldn't move my lower body at all. But anyways, doing pull-ups and thus begins recovery, right? So day 1, right? Surgery was on Tuesday. Wednesday, they wanted to get me out of bed. And I was all for that, because I wanted to get back to sport as soon as I possibly could, right? And so I'm like, yeah, let's do that. One little problem. I can't move my legs. The epidural was set, I think, at like a level 8. And it was a complete nerve block. And so I was like, I'm all for getting up, but like, you're going to have to do something to where I can at least feel my right leg so that I can put pressure on it. And they're like, all right, we'll talk to the anesthesiologist. And so he came in and he was like, I'm willing to lower it so that you can feel your right leg, but you just need to be clear, you will feel your left leg too. Like, this is how this thing works. And I was like, that's fine. Let's do it. And so they lower the epidural down to a level 2, and the epidural stays in until, I want to say Friday morning, if not a little I think it was Friday morning. I don't remember. But so it gets lower. I start feeling my leg again. At this point, I've only taken like one pain pill, I think. Taken some Tylenol, things like that. But I was feeling pretty decent. And so we get up, and my first PT was walking from my bed, and they wanted me to just do a few steps. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm going to walk from my bed to the bathroom. And because I was like, when I go home, I'm going to have to be able to do this. And so that's what we did. My therapist's only requirement was, as far as I walk, I have to be able to walk back. And so she let me choose that distance. And so I did it, and I was exhausted, and I slept for hours, but I did it. And then later on, we went a little bit further. Thursday came, and I walked all the way to the gym. We worked on stairs and getting out of the car, things like that. It was really great. But when I came out of surgery, I had this thing on my leg called the Game Ready. Y'all, if you ever have to have surgery, you need to get a Game Ready. It is a game changer. But it looked like I had a giant diaper on my hip, and it was a compression and constant flow of ice. It was amazing. So I had that on, and I kept that on pretty much every day for the next 2 months. That's how great it was. But anyways, in addition to walking, on that Wednesday, I was put in what's called a CPM machine. So I had super limited movement, as in no movement of my hip for the first 7 weeks. Because of the labral repair that she had to do, I couldn't move my hip you can't see it, but save my legs, right? I couldn't move my hip in and out. And so I had to literally get someone to hold my leg and help me move so that I could move my whole body at the same time, if that makes sense. And so they put me in this CPM machine, and it stands for continuous passive movement. And it's a huge machine, and my leg gets strapped in, and basically it just makes my leg very, very slow and controlled go up and down, kind of like in this video that I'm showing right now. It was slow, and I started off trying to get my hip to 30 degrees, and it was automated. So I just had to lay there. Most of the time I would take a nap, and my leg would just sit there and move. I could control the speed as I got further along. I had that for 3 weeks, I think. As I got further along, then I could make it go a little bit faster, and eventually I reached 90 degrees of bend in my hip. And so that was pretty awesome. And other things I kept doing while I was laying in bed even was recalling my basic physical therapy stuff. And so doing quad contractions, pumping of my feet to keep blood flow. But I was doing as much as I could to get stimulation back into my quad. And like I said, the staff at St. Thomas was amazing. My nurses were great. I wasn't a huge fan of the overnight stuff because those nurses were I'm sure they're very nice people, but they were working the night shift, and they woke me up a lot, and they didn't do it very kindly sometimes. So that wasn't so much fun. But my daytime nurses were super kind and super nice. And Dr. Ferguson came and checked on me, and every day, or she called, either one. But Wednesday, it's pretty funny, she came in, and they'd already lowered my epidural, and she was checking some stuff out and looked, and she was like, "Are you seriously on a 2?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I've never had a patient have their epidural that low the day after surgery." And I looked at her, and it probably wasn't the funniest thing. Maybe it was, but it was a smart response at the time. But I looked at her, and I was like, I thought you said this was gonna hurt. Because y'all, through this entire process, the pain level has been minimal. And that is only that's only glory to God. That is only something the Lord could have done. It's something I prayed for very diligently, because beforehand, everything that Dr. Ferguson was saying and all of the support groups that I was in, like online and stuff, everybody said, like, this is the worst pain you're ever going to feel. Some people said it was worse than childbirth. I don't have that reference. But I mean, it hurt, but I wasn't in pain. When I was in the hospital, they gave me a 12-hour release pain pills starting Thursday morning. It was, okay, so I had the epidural until Thursday morning, because they gave me the 12-hour release pain pill Thursday morning. They gave me one Thursday night. They gave me one Friday morning before I went home, or in the morning. And then right before I went home, I took one dose of the faster release pain pill. That's it. The rest of the time at home and everything, all I've taken is Tylenol. I'm not trying to be like, look at me, this is great, but like, that's kind of unheard of. The staff they just kept saying, you're amazing. Like, I can't believe that you're doing all of this so fast, and making jokes on the floor of just like, you're a rock star patient. Like, and apparently I set a bunch of like post-surgical records for how fast I progressed after surgery. Again, I mean, yes, it was me, but it was the Lord. It was all the Lord going through me. So, so Friday I go home. Mom and Dad took me home. It felt so good to walk. Now, when I say walk, for the first 7 weeks, when I'm not allowed to move my hip, I was also only allowed to do 10% of my body weight, which is about 30 pounds of weight bearing through my surgical hip.
Home sweet home.
And so that's basically like a toe touch. But I go home on Friday. Dad gets a CPM machine set up. Mom and Dad end up going home. And then my friend Joe came over, and Bentley, the puppy. I love them. Anyways, they came over for the weekend. And then for the next like 3 weeks, I had somebody with me 24/7. So remember earlier how I said I couldn't have gotten through this without my community? That's no joke. Like, I literally could not have done this without people. And people staying with me, because again, I needed help just getting in and out of my bed, going to the bathroom, taking showers, feeding, like giving me food. I could feed myself, people, but I couldn't prepare it. I couldn't carry it. I couldn't do any of that stuff. Some people from school made a care calendar for me, and literally every other day, starting on that Friday that I got home, so 26, Tuesday, 27, right? So like the 29th or so of May, until August of 2020. So just a few months ago, I had meals every other day brought to me. What? That's insane. No, that's community. Y'all, there's no way I could have gotten through this without my people. And, maybe you've heard the saying, maybe you haven't, of it takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes a village to live, guys. Like, if I hadn't had the community of support that I had, there's no way I would be able to do it. And not even just physically, but emotionally. Especially during those first 7 weeks when I couldn't move. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I couldn't drive. I had people that would come and get me and take me out and try and get me out of the house as much as possible. But there was still something for me, being this independent woman, that was broken because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't lift the weight that I was lifting. I couldn't even, do a squat. I couldn't do these simple things that I had grown accustomed to. And in those moments, even the first couple weeks home, I really felt like the Lord said, am I enough? I'm teaching you contentment through this. Are you content to just sit with me? Do you have to have the TV on? Do you have to have your computer? And it was a hard process for me to kind of go through and ultimately get to that place of, yes, Lord, I'm content with you. Even so much where it's like, if I was going through a bad day, which I had a lot of them, and y'all, I had some really dark moments, especially those first 7 weeks, where I would normally go and work out. Like I would normally go swim or go for a bike ride or go do something physical to clear my mind. And I didn't have that. All I had was the Lord, and He's enough. And I got through it. So eventually, actually, I shouldn't say eventually. Within that first week home, I was laying on my stomach and trying to stretch out my abs and my hip flexor a little bit. Dr. Ferguson wanted me to eventually get to being able to like hold my foot. And that first week I could only touch my heel, but then within like 4 days later, I was holding on to my foot the way she wanted me to. We called it tummy time. People joked with me all the time about that, but I had tummy time because it just stretches out all those muscles. And one day when I was having a pity party that I couldn't go on my bike ride or I couldn't go do X, Y, or Z, the Lord reminded me, don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. And I could do upper body stuff. And so I got my bands out, and I would sit there and do upper body stuff. And I did make a mistake of, I forget who it was. I think Joe was with me. She was in the kitchen making breakfast. And I was sitting in my chair because I would sit on the couch sometimes to change it up. I spent a lot of time in my bed. But sometimes I would sit in a folding chair, like on a couple pillows, just to get me more upright, get some more core strength going on, and to get some bend in my hip. And so I looked around, and I don't have one close, but I had a 20-pound dumbbell sitting on the ground. And so I thought I was like, I could totally do a ground to overhead snatch, like sitting down. Totally could do this. And so I had it in front of me, and I bent down. I'm seated, but I sat down, and I went and I did my pull, and I got to like right here, and I went to go up, and I was like, nope, can't do that. And like I dropped it, and Joe was like, what are you doing? And anyways, so I learned to stick to the bands. So I would do like triceps and bench press and all these different things. And so that's what I would focus on. I focused on my quad contractions and the little things that I could do to progress myself as quickly as possible while being safe still. And so about week 6, I think it was July 14th, July 17th, one of those two, I started going to physical therapy. And that was like a ray of sunshine in my life. I would go 3 days a week, and for the first few months, it was all manual, like manipulation and traction, and my physical therapist just kind of moving my leg in a very controlled way and massaging my scar and doing a bunch of things like that. Which, by the way, my scar is 7 inches. It's a pretty big scar. It's pretty awesome. But anyway, so at the 7-week mark, I was allowed to start progressing my weight bearing again. Well, not again, but to start progressing my weight bearing. And so my only caveat is that I had to be on the crutches until I could walk without a limp. And so that was a slow process. We were hoping that I would be full weight bearing by 10 weeks, and that didn't happen. At the 10-week mark, I was on one crutch. And then at the 14-week mark, I was full weight bearing. And so this was great, right? Like I had hoped to be full weight bearing at 10 weeks, but my body just wasn't having it. And that was kind of discouraging because I had goals, but I had a choice. I could be joyful for what I had, or I could focus on what I didn't have. And so I focused on what I had. And during that time also, I was starting to do squats. I was starting to do deadlifts with a 10-pound weight. I was starting to do all these little things. And now, even over the past few weeks, like therapy should be, I've been progressing a lot more. And so it's been a process. It has been something that hasn't always been enjoyable, but I look forward to physical therapy every day that I go because I know that it's an opportunity for me to get better. And my therapist is amazing, by the way, too. So I'm going to therapy pretty frequently, and now I'm doing things that, 4 weeks ago I would never have thought of doing. And, I have some setbacks too. I don't know, 6 weeks ago or so, 4 weeks ago, I decided, well, Ferguson said that I could try anything I wanted. And so I thought I would try running again. That did not work out well at all. But I waited till I knew I was going to have physical therapy the next day because then she could fix me. And that's what had to happen. But I tried. It didn't work. That's okay. Because just a few weeks ago, like last week, 2 weeks ago, I was playing basketball with some of my 8th graders. And that was great. Like, it hurt. And Ferg wasn't super happy with me when she found out because I'm still apparently healing some of my bone. But, you live, you learn, and you ask for forgiveness. So anyways, it's, like I said, it's just a process. And you might have heard the phrase, like, trust the process. I don't. I trust the Lord who made the process, and I trust the people who are creating that process for me on a daily basis, which is Ferguson and my physical therapist, Kelly. And, I trust them because they know my hip and they know me and we're on the same page and they have the same goals that I have, which first and foremost is hip health. And secondly is return to sport. And so they're doing everything in their power to get me back to sport because that's what my goal is, right? So I had my 6-month post-op with Ferguson last week, and I went in and I was kind of disappointed and kind of discouraged again because I had seen online this girl that I know who had had a similar surgery to me, but she had hers about 5 weeks after me, and she was already back to softball. She was already back to running and doing all these things. And I was super discouraged by that. Like, I was ecstatic for her. So excited because we've built kind of this friendship and relationship online. Misery loves company, I guess. And so I was ecstatic for her, but I was also like, man, why am I not there? I'm an athlete. I'm 5 weeks ahead of her. And when I told Ferguson that, I told Val that too. Thank you guys for being so honest and so blunt with me. But they just said, Stace, for one, she's like 13 years younger than you. You're older now. You don't recover the same way. I still refuse to think that, but it's true. I do not recover like I once did. And she's like, she's a D1 athlete and has a ton of resources behind her. And so you can't compare your guys' journey. You can't compare the two. Like, they're not the same. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. And that's when I realized comparison is the stealer, the killer of joy. And that's exactly what had happened. I couldn't be joyful in where I was and the strides that I was making, which was huge, because I was focused on what I wasn't doing. It goes back to what the Lord had said weeks and weeks ago. Don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. And so, I don't know. I share all that because I don't know where you're at and what you might be struggling with or going through. But I really challenge you to not compare yourself to somebody else because you don't know the story that they're going through. You have one job, and that's to live your story, your life. And the Lord is gracious enough to invite us into the writing of that story. But our job's to live our story. This hip surgery, this process is mine and nobody else's. And that's the thing that, I even love, like I said earlier about Ferguson, is my hip, my story. That girl's hip, that girl's story. They're completely different, even though they're somewhat similar, completely different. And so, I've had to spend the past week just reevaluating that and finding those moments of joy in my story, in my recovery. And now this week, the end of last week and this week, I'm doing things in therapy that I never thought I would have done. I'd hoped that I would get to do some of these things. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be doing things in therapy that I maybe can't imagine doing right now. And that's part of the process. It's part of the journey. And so I just really encourage you guys, live your life to the fullest and embrace whatever story you're in the middle of right now. It might be painful and it might hurt, but embrace it because there is another side to it. There is a silver lining per se, but we have to make the choice in our hearts and in our minds to choose joy. There were so many times over these past 6 months where I was depressed, I was sad, and I was not happy, but I chose joy. I was still joyful through the process because I was able, even though I wasn't able to move, I was still alive. I was able to move. And there are people, I had to realize that my immobility had an end in sight, even though it was far away and it was hard to see, there was an end in sight. And some people, they don't have that. So it's all about perspective shift. But anyways, so, that's where I'm at right now. And I know I'll be in a different place 6 months from now at that year mark. And I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to live this next 6 months of this journey and walk out this story and this process and seeing just what the Lord's going to do in my body, through my testimony, whatever this might be. And so I hope you were encouraged today. I hope that you found a little bit of encouragement through my story, and maybe you learned a little bit more about hip anatomy and hip health than you would have known. Like I said, if unfortunately you're in a situation where you need hip work done, call Dr. Ferguson, Music City Orthopedics. If you need your knees or anything else done, Music City Orthopedics, the place to go. So guys, I hope you found this inspiring, encouraging, enlightening. If you found any of that stuff, would you do me a favor and hit that subscribe button? It would help me out a ton. But also you'll be notified when any new content is put up on this page. Take a look around. I've got adventure videos. I have a couple interviews with some people that are doing really cool things. Every other week, I post a new interview with somebody who's just living their great story and living just their life and doing really cool things with it. So those come out every other week. The next one will come out next Friday. And you aren't going to want to miss that. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, be notified of when new content comes out. And until then, live your great story.